Naturally, the apartment complex is testing fire alarms. Right when I try to make a video. Well, it's the middle of the week, January 22nd, and I figured I'd do a mid-month, not wrap-up, but update. So far for the month of January, I've read 15 books, and I have 4 more planned to read. I don't know if I'm going to be doing any other books besides those. If so, it might just be a little sneak early into Black History Month books. Or maybe a romance for Valentine's Day books. I don't know. The first book that I read this year was a 5-star book. I knew it was going to be a 5-star book. It is always a 5-star book. And that was a reread of The Little Prince, my favorite book of all time. The second book that I read was written by Busy Phillips. It was her autobiography titled This Will Only Hurt a Little. I love Busy Phillips. If you haven't seen her in Cougar Town and White Chicks, you're missing out. I mean, what are you even doing watching my channel? Really. I ended up giving that one 4 stars. If you like her work, you're gonna like it. I ended up reading it so I could continue with a series, I guess, of autobiographies by women who crack me up. So I'll probably end up continuing that this year as I stumble into them, but I don't have any plans for it. I don't know who I'm gonna read next. The third book this year I read was Less by Andrew Sean Greer. This is the Pulitzer Prize winning novel about a novelist who turns 50 and decides to go on an adventure to basically escape his life and rediscover himself. It was good. I think definitely I've just turned 40, being at a kind of transitional point in your life would aid in enjoying this novel. So if you're just getting out of high school, deciding if you're going to go to college or start a career, just getting out of college and trying to start a career, if you're a parent and your child's just moved out and you're an empty nester now and you don't know what to do with the rest of your life, if you're turning 30, if you're turning 40, 50, if you're retiring, those kind of things. I think that's an optimal point to read this book. Not that you won't enjoy it at any other time, just that I think you'll get the most out of it by being better able to relate to the main character. I think that's always the case. I ended up giving Less 4 stars. The fourth book I read was by Ocean Vuong. That is On Earth, We're Briefly Gorgeous. This is touted as being a very poetic book. It is a pseudo faux autobiography in letter form. Well, not really in letter form, but it's supposed to have been a letter to his mother written in English, knowing that she can't read English. So kind of like a confessional letter / I don't want my mom to worry about me, but I kind of want to vent my problems kind of a thing. And it kind of came off a little odd because there were some sexual things in there that I don't know if I would tell my best friend, like some of these things, let alone write them down in a letter to my mother, even knowing that she won't be able to read them because somebody can read them. You know what I'm saying? Everybody talked about how good the poetic writing was. If you read the first 3 pages, you'll be like, okay, I get it. You know how to start that one line 50 times in a row with the same 3 words. I'm over it, Ocean. It was also the book of the month for December on the Books Unbound podcast by Ariel Bissett and Raylene LeMay. I gave On Earth, We're Briefly Gorgeous 3 stars. The 5th book that I read for January was Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie. Now, I had grown up with the Disney cartoon version, and I understood that the book was supposed to be a darker version of the story. Murphy Napier, not sure how to pronounce your name. Sorry, Murphy. I do know how to spell your first name, though, with an E. It's her favorite book of all time, similar to me with The Little Prince, so I thought, maybe this is a book we can bond over and she'll be my new bestie. We're not destined to be besties, Murphy. It's okay, though. So I kind of think I missed the window on when to read Peter Pan. I really feel like between 5 and 12 would have been a good age when you're still kind of bratty yourself and appreciate bratty, ridiculous behavior out of other people. I don't know. Peter Pan was just obnoxious and annoying and full of himself. And he would do stuff like save you from falling, but only if he thought enough people were watching and would notice and would think he was being heroic, not because he actually wanted you to live. I wouldn't say it was a dark, twisted version of the Disney story, just a, wow, Peter Pan is really just totally full of himself and has no concept of the fact that other people exist and are living beings. I only ended up giving Peter Pan 3 stars. I was anticipating giving it a 4 or 5 stars. So 3 stars, even though that's only 1 less than a 4-star, is still disappointing for me. Okay, now the next one. Yes, I did put it on my Goodreads. Yes, it was a book, so it counts. I don't want any back talk, or you can go to your room. And that was Totally Wacky Roadside Attractions. I ended up buying this for a friend for Christmas who's been antsy to go on a road trip for a while, thinking it would just be something fun and neat to look at pictures, and maybe he'll be able to plan that road trip out finally. Well, Pamela Chenko wrote this, and I'm pretty sure she wrote this for kids aged 4 to 6. It was basically, I think it was 36 pages, and it was a very thin, scholastic, hello Elliot, children's book, paperback book, primarily dominated by a photo of the attraction and like a 1 or 2 sentence description of it, and maybe those sentences would have a comma, you know, if it was getting fancy. It was interesting, and I did learn some stuff, and it did have really great pictures in it. I gave it 3 stars. You know, I enjoyed it. 2 stars for me means I didn't enjoy it. 3 stars means I liked it. It wasn't great, but I didn't dislike it. I disliked that it was so short. The 7th book for January was Beartown by Frederick Bachman. Books and Lala had mentioned Frederick Bachman a few times, so I thought I needed to read something by him. I was on a road trip with my boss, and we were trying to find a book. I noticed that this was on the library app for free, so I asked him if he wanted to listen to a book about a small town revolving around hockey. Now, he likes hockey, so I thought I had him there. And he said, okay. Then I told him it was based in Sweden, and he kind of backed off a little bit. But I told him it's in English. It's not like there's going to be subtitles on an audiobook. So he relented and let me listen to this book. Well, we both ended up really enjoying it. I believe we both gave it 4 stars. There were some interesting characters in here. Perhaps they were morally gray or just complicated people. Okay, the book is about a small town whose livelihood basically is focused all around this hockey team of theirs. They're trying to get into the championships. They're trying to win. That way the area, the larger area that they're in, I don't think the entire country, but like their larger area, their county, state, whatever the equivalent in Sweden is, would move the hockey training facility to their school since they were the #1 school, or they're trying to be the #1 school. Well, their star player, who is the one everybody is counting on to get this big win for the whole town to save the town from collapse, ends up raping the general manager's daughter at a party. Now, the town gets pretty divided on what's going on here. A couple people are definitely backing the girl up, and a lot of people are definitely backing the boy up. There's like a whole gang of people backing the boy up. And then there's some people that are kind of trying to stay out of it. One of those people trying to stay out of it is the coach, David. Now, David also had a moment of glory where he was devastated when he found out that one of his players was gay and did not come to him and feel open enough with him and feel that he could trust David enough to let him know this, which made you think, wow, David's a really great guy. What a perfect guy to be a coach. And then he turns around and constantly is talking to himself in his head about how he shouldn't get involved with the rape case. It's not any of his business. This isn't up to him. He's just a coach. He just needs to go coach, and that's it. Like, just trying to assuage himself of guilt from having to coach the boy accused of raping her. So you were kind of like, yay, David, and then David is scum. You know what I mean? I also enjoyed one of the other characters that starts out being kind of a bad boy and then ends up really having a nice guy, sensitive side to him. It's interesting. It's interesting, the dynamic of guys in a group of guys, especially sports-related guys, versus guys by themselves or with people they feel more comfortable with. Men are dumb. The 8th book I read for January was The Undefeated by Kwame Alexander. This book is a children's picture book, and it's essentially one poem stretched out through all the pages of the book. So you get one line or stanza or whatever they call it in poetry land on each of the pages, along with an accompanying photo. Well, an illustration. It's a drawing. They were beautiful. The poem was beautiful. You're going to get teary-eyed at one point. I just read it there. I didn't buy it. I found it while I was looking for Black History Month books to read in February, and they had it on display in their employee spotlight book kind of area. You know what I'm talking about? I gave that 4 stars. Yes, that was another very short book. Yes, that is partially why I have 15 books. It still counts. It's still a book, people. I didn't go in there like, oh, let me read all of these 2-page children's books. The 9th book that I read this year was The Shape of Water. 5 stars. Of course, the movie was also 5 stars for me. It was the first film in so long I can't remember what the previous film was that had me stressed out during Oscar season. I wanted it to win Best Animated Short based in Antarctica in black and white. Like, that's not even a category, but I desperately needed it to win it. So when I found out that there was a book made for it, immediately I had to have it. It had to at least sit on my shelf, even if I never read it. It's beautiful. There's a couple sketches in there, one of Strickland, one of the creature. You kind of get a sketch of each of the main characters, kind of. There's not like a lot of artwork in it. I kind of wish that there was more to it, or maybe like bubbles in the top corner by the page number, or little seaweed down in the corner. You know, just something kind of interesting. Guillermo del Toro brought in Daniel Kraus, I guess, in order to translate the screenplay into a novel. It basically follows the movie, other than the fact that at the very, very end, you get a little bit extra with Eliza and the creature, like a little bit. It's like 2 paragraphs extra. So don't think it's like a whole additional chapter. Now, the primary difference is that you get a lot of background information on Strickland. He's the bad guy with the electroshock wand. You really get to know why he's become how he is, why he's kind of this abusive jerk. You get a lot of his military history. You get to see a lot of his family side, what's going on with his wife and son. A lot more information about him, which I thought really fleshed out his character well. So if you're kind of interested in knowing more about bad guys, it might be worth a read. If you loved the film, it's definitely worth a read. If you've never seen the film, stop watching this. Go rent it. Now, I'm waiting. There was one other tiny thing that I noticed different from the movie to the book. I'm gonna have to rewatch the movie just to make sure, but I don't remember noticing it. But in the book, it definitely stood out to me. Zelda and Giles felt like they were about to become best friends. It felt to me almost like there could have been a novella after this based on Zelda and Giles, which I would have loved. Okay, the 10th book that I read was Reverie by Ryan LaSala. This was the Barnes & Noble Young Adult book pick for January. I ended up giving it 4 stars, and really it was kind of minus 1 star because it was YA. I really think I need to just not read YA unless it sounds like desperately like it might be a 5-star book. I don't really have anything against young adults. It's just your problems seem silly to a 40-year-old. Sorry. In this book, the main issue, other than the main plot point, is that the main character's older sister keeps trying to help him.
Wow, she's ruining my life, trying to protect me and keep me alive.
Dude, that's your problem? I don't know how this boy is going to handle the real world when he turns 30 and wishes somebody was there to help him. Now, this book involves reveries. It's kind of magic revolved around daydreams and people's internal fantasy worlds that you kind of live in. Now, the premise of this book sounded so up my alley. I thought, oh my god, this might be a 5-star book. This sounds amazing. It's a beautiful cover. Everything was lined up for me to love it. But the young adultness with that young adult, seemingly silly situation brought it down. I feel like if this was written for an adult audience, it would be on my shelf with some kind of knickknacks around it. I would be losing my mind. It would have been my Night Circus for 2020. I would have loved it. Oh, I wish that there was an older audience version of this book. Especially keeping the bad guy. He was great. He could have been a little more fleshed out, but he was so entertaining. And I also really enjoyed how similar he was to the main character. Like one little thing different and they could have swapped places. I thought that was pretty interesting. The 11th book for January I read was So You Think You're a Bookworm by Joare. Hoare. I think that's how you say it. Now this basically describes different types of readers. The obsessive book club person, the obsessive reviewer, the person who never finishes a series. I know some of you are out there. I've seen those videos. I know you never finish a series. It's okay. Apparently you're just that kind of bookworm. And there's also some little silly quizzes, BuzzFeed like, hey, are you this kind of a bookworm or this kind of a bookworm? It was a cute little silly gift. And I could see it being great for being a cute little silly gift to another person who does a lot of reading. Just a 3-star book. Liked it. Nothing spectacular, nothing to dislike though. The 12th book I read for January was actually the book of the year for Barnes & Noble and Waterstones. Are they the same company? And that is The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. This book reminds me so much of The Little Prince and Winnie the Pooh, but with drastically better artwork than either one of those. I'm sorry, Little Prince. Also, the life lessons and wisdom is very concise. It's basically 1 or 2 little lines on a page with some beautiful artwork, but it's heart-wrenching. It's beautiful, it's amazing. I rushed out to go get the Barnes & Noble exclusive edition because it's bigger and the pages are thicker. They're basically cover stock kind of pages, so they're very thick and sturdy. Actual book size isn't drastically different. They only had 1 left in all of Austin, so I had to drive all the way across town to go get it. And the guy told me, oh yeah, there's the exclusive one on top. If that's the one that you want, make sure you grab that one. And I picked it up and kind of forgot that it was only 1 of them left because the one underneath it was so similarly sized that I didn't even notice it was smaller at first. I kind of dug through all of them trying to find the one with the best, most pristine spine and corners to it, because I'm mental. And then almost walked off with the wrong version. Only when I opened it up and was flipping through and thinking, these are thicker pages, did it trigger in my brain and go, oh my god, wait. It was only that first one was the special one. So I had to run back to the pile and get it. I was convinced in that 2 seconds I had turned around, somebody would have gone, oh, what's this? And taken it from me. 5 stars. Plus now it can go on my Little Prince shelf. And it also has a matching fox already from the Little Prince. How amazing is that? How come Winnie the Pooh didn't have a fox? The 13th book that I read was The Family Upstairs by Lisa Jewell. This was the Barnes & Noble Adult Book Club pick for the month of November. There wasn't a December pick, and there wasn't a January pick, because their next one after that was Dear Edward, and that's for February. Now, somebody on BookTube had talked about this and kind of made me interested in it, but they had described it pretty inaccurately. I can't remember who it was, because it was a while ago now. And I don't want to call anybody out, but it totally seems like they did not read this book. Maybe they didn't. Maybe it was just they were going to read it kind of a book, and this is what they thought it was about. Let's go for that. But I was told that it was about a woman who turns 25, inherits this big, crazy, fancy house in London, and creepy spookiness going on upstairs. I was like, okay, that sounds kind of interesting. Now, in reality, I don't know if this is supposed to be part of the mystery and thrill of it. It can't possibly be. Okay, potentially a spoiler. But in reality, 95% of this book is about her uncle escaping from a cult that has taken up residence in his family's home. And they're the people upstairs. But like you know them, like early into the book. There wasn't anything really mystery or thrillery about it. I guess who her parents are was vaguely a mystery, but not one you really cared about. They didn't really hype up the mystery there. And then a big chunk of the beginning of the book is actually talking about her mother raising 2 more children, but they're living on the streets. And it makes it seem like they're going to be this major part of the story, this situation that they're in. But really, that whole big chunk of the book could have been condensed down to a couple of lines saying, that's when she got the text. The child is 25. The next morning, she jumped on a plane to London. Voila. There, I saved you a whole bunch of reading at the beginning. If you want to read this book, and it's talking all about this woman and 2 kids living on the street, skip, go all the way to the next section of the book. Absolutely nothing important is going on at that point. It was all totally editable out. You could have cut, removed, off with its head. The only thing mystery or thriller about this book was the absolute last chapter, which was extremely short, and it involved the uncle, who throughout the book kind of did some sketchy socio or psychopathic type things, but it all seemed rational as a way to escape from a cult and try to save his family from a cult. So it was kind of like justified psychopathic behavior, I guess. I don't know. During most of the book, you're not getting this strong vibe that, he's gonna snap or anything. But at the very end of the book, like, creep factor 11 goes off. But it's like this open-ended weirdness, and it's not that he's gonna become a serial killer or something, it's just he's like obsessed with this person and like stalked them down. He's trying to rejoin this person's life. Ingratiate? I don't know what word I'm looking for. But he's trying to like get back into this person's world and existence again, even though this other person hates him, but he's obsessed with him. I gave it 3 stars. It might have gotten 4 stars if I had actually known what the book was about at the beginning, and I wasn't waiting for this mystery thriller aspect about these people upstairs. There was no mystery about the people upstairs. I guess the main mystery is, how come all of a sudden the uncle is crazy and psycho at the very end of the book? I listened to it on audiobook. The whole book was plain and normal. Sounded like contemporary fiction. A terrible story about a family that got sucked into a cult, and the repercussions trickling down 25 years later. But on that last chapter,
all of a sudden, there was spooky, intense music, and you just knew something terrible was about to happen.
It was dumb. I gave it a 3 stars. The 14th book I read was Reincarnation Blues by Michael Poore. This kind of continues on with my recent obsession with books where people relive their lives. You're seeing multiple people's perspectives based around a singular event in their shared history, that kind of thing. Or someone kind of a sliding doors effect, where at one point in the story, it splits and there's kind of multiple dimensional versions of them. One where they made it onto an elevator and one where they missed the elevator, and how their world kind of changes based around that. I'm kind of into those books lately. So I saw this book on the library app, picked it up, thought it was going to be amazing and brilliant. It checks a lot of my boxes. However, most of the lives described were so silly, ridiculous, and pointless that it almost felt like a middle grade book with no life lesson, really. So not even like a good middle grade. If you read and liked John Dies at the End, I think you would like this book. It's written in the same like over-the-top, ridiculous, nonsensical way. I gave it 3 stars. I know it sounds like I disliked it, but I didn't dislike it. It just was too silly for me. My most recent read was The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. This is a very popular book. I'm sure you've heard of it. You've probably already read it. It is about 2 sisters during World War II and how their lives diverge when their father kind of abandons them and they raise themselves kind of separately. One sister is very rebellious and one sister is very responsible. It's kind of the story about how these 2 girls grow up and mature during World War II and the struggles that each of them has to go through from picking their life choices. It was really interesting in that respect. It wasn't a whole lot of, it wasn't a war book. There wasn't a lot of soldiery action going on. Now, it was kind of creepy weird for a while there. Why is Kristen writing this Nazi guy so sympathetically? What's going on here? Is there something wrong with me? Or is there something wrong with Kristen? Something's definitely wrong with one of us. Now, there are still 4 books that I intend to read before February. One of them being the 10,000 Doors of January, because January's in the title. No other real reason. And the Starless Sea, which I started on November 4th, and I am 268 pages into, or something like that. I've been reading that one intentionally slowly so I could drag it out, because I'm anticipating loving it like the Night Circus, and I rushed through that one so quickly that I ended up wanting to just reread it like 6 more times, and every book I read afterward just felt like garbage, and I didn't want to finish anything. So it put me into a slump because nothing was going to be as good. I just knew it. It was very dramatic. Now, if you're into, I guess they call it portal fantasy, books about people escaping through magical doorways, both of these books are like that. The Starless Sea and 10,000 Doors of January. Both of them have a similar 2-line description. Person finds magical doorways, person travels through magical doorways. However, the books are entirely different so far. The writing in The Starless Sea is very Erin Morgenstern. It's very, a lot of people call it run-on sentencey. It's very drawn out and descriptive. Now, the writing in 10,000 Doors of January is much more accessible. And it also does a really fun thing where it breaks, what do they call it? The fourth wall? The third wall? You know, like in a comic book when Deadpool turns to the person reading the comic book and talks to them. Kind of that thing. There's a point at the very beginning of the book where they're talking about doors. And the character goes, now wait, I guess I should have capitalized that. Now see, doesn't that look much better now? And like talking all ridiculous and silly about the shape of the letter D in door and how it's, I don't know. It was just weird. It was cute. It was silly. It really drew me into the book. It hooked me in pretty early. I was enjoying the writing style. It was a lot lighter and more fun than the Starless Sea, and the Starless Sea is more serious, pay attention to, or you could get lost. I'm also in the middle of reading Elantris. Rachael Marie and Bowties and Books with Jesse are doing a Cosmere-a-thon, I think that's what they're calling it, where they're reading a whole bunch of Brandon Sanderson this year. Now, last year I had read Mistborn because the magic system was so hyped, and I love a good magic system, that I thought I was just going to love it. It kind of ended up being like Children of Blood and Bone and Red Queen for me, where if I just had been given a list of what all the different powers were, kind of would have been enough for me. Read through Mistborn and wasn't amazed by it like I thought I was going to be, so kind of put Brandon Sanderson on my back shelf. Now, Elantris was Brandon Sanderson's debut novel, so I was kind of anticipating liking it less than Mistborn, but I wanted to keep up with Jesse and Rachael, so I thought I would give it a shot. Plus, it was on the library app for free for audio, so it could have been my audiobook while I'm driving around or grocery shopping or taking the dogs for walks or whatever at the gym. And I'm really actually liking this one more than Mistborn. There were 2 characters in Mistborn that really hooked me in, and I wish there was like a book or a novella just kind of describing these 2 characters' backstories, but there isn't. With Elantris, I'm actually kind of interested in the 2 main characters and how similar they are, but how they're coming at a problem from 2 different directions, but with the same goal in mind, but kind of ruining each other's chances at accomplishing the goal unknowingly. So it's kind of interesting that way. Also, the mystery involved with Elantris has me a lot more hooked than the issues going on in Mistborn. And the last book that I'll be reading for January, because I want to finish it by February 1st, is Tristan Strong Punches a Hole in the Sky. Now, I'm also reading this for Black History Month, but however, I'm reading it before February. That way I can donate it to a local school or library. I'm also buying a second copy of this and also going to recover it too. I don't know if you can see that, but I did like a fancy dust jacket cover thing. I had filmed a video of me doing this, but it came out terribly. People were coming home, garage door noises, dogs scampering around in jangly collars. It was just ridiculous. So I'm probably just going to link down below to the video I saw teaching you how to put these covers on. I had picked this one thinking it's got a black main character in it and apparently a black secondary character in it. It's in the Rick Riordan series, so it's going to be popular with young people. I thought this book, out of all the ones I was looking at, had the best chance of being read by the most people. So I picked that one to be the one I was going to donate and buy multiple copies of. Does that make sense? Okay, if you think you want to do this and be able to donate a book to the library and your book also does not come in a library-bound edition, so you have to worry about the dust jackets getting tore up when people are cramming it into their backpacks, then I'd highly suggest doing it this way. However, I would tweak some things now that I've done it. I had bought pre-cut ones, the length of the book plus a little extra for the flaps. Now I didn't measure this kind of length including the insides again. I had just measured the height of the book, which is how they kind of expect you to order them. But instead I would get, I forget what this was, like 8.9 inches or something. So I think I got like the 9-inch height. However, I would say get the 9-inch height or whatever height it was, and then buy it in the roll version and not pre-cut, because then you could start it here, wrap it across, bring it under the book, fold it over at the top, and then cut here, and then the wrapping would completely cover it inside and out. Mine, if you can see how it's got about 3/4 of an inch there where it's not protected by the plastic? It ends up being, 2.5, 2 3/4, 3 inches here where it's not held together. So this could snag up. Now it is still in plastic, so it is a lot stronger than the paper. However, it is still the weakest point now. Whereas here, I've got archival tape between the layers of plastic, so it doesn't kind of lift up there. Does that make sense?